Join me today while I show you how to make the absolute best chocolate cake on the planet. This chocolate cake also has white chocolate buttercream frosting. Stay tuned. Hello friends and welcome back. If you're new to my channel, my name is Andrea and this is Dessert First. So today I'm going to show you how to make the best chocolate cake. This cake recipe has been a recipe my mom has made pretty much my entire life. And that recipe was handed down to her from my grandmother. So she made a few little tweaks to it over the years. I've pretty much kept that going, really not making any other changes. So this is probably the cake that is used for more birthdays, more special occasions than any other cake recipe that our family has. So we're going to get to it. It's quick and easy, so don't think that it's a difficult cake. So, all right, let's get started. All right, so we're going to get started here with getting our liquid ingredients put together. So I've got a saucepan here, just a small one, on a medium heat. I'm going to add 1 cup of water. And then I've got 2 sticks of butter here. You can use salted or unsalted. Mine was out of the fridge. It's only been sitting out for maybe an hour, so I just kind of cut it up to help it melt a little faster. You don't have to. It just takes a little longer to melt if it's a full stick and it's cold. So we're just going to put that in there. And then we're just going to mix this around. Don't mind the giant dog walking by. That's Sweetie. It's getting ready for the thunderstorm out here, so she's inside. All right, and then I'm going to add 8 tablespoons of unsweetened Dutch processed cocoa powder. Now, 8 tablespoons typically, that's a half a cup, but my tablespoons, usually when I scoop it in, it's kind of packed. So it actually works out to be more than half a cup. So, and this was one of the things that my mother had changed, because originally it only called for 4 tablespoons of cocoa powder, but this just gives a really rich chocolate cake if you add the 8 tablespoons to it. So we're just going to mix this around. You just want all of the butter to melt. And then we are going to bring it up to a boil. This cake is a fairly solid, dense cake, so it's got some weight to it. If you're making a cake from like a cake mix, like a box mix, they're fairly lightweight, so they have a lot of air in them, and this one's pretty solid. So I really like this if you're wanting to stack cakes. This cake really can hold the weight of more cake on top of it. So, but it's still very moist. Whereas sometimes a dense cake will be a little dry. This one's not at all. It's a very moist cake. And we've paired this with so many different types of frostings. They're all good. My favorite way to eat this cake, though, is once it just cools down to where it's not, warm to the touch anymore, just kind of room temperature. Just some whipped topping on it is like my favorite way to eat it, no frosting. But this one we're going to actually add a white chocolate buttercream frosting to. All right, so I'm just waiting for this to come up to a boil, and then we're going to boil it for 1 minute. You don't want to skip this step, it's important. I didn't used to think that it was that important, but it does make a difference in how your cake turns out. So and we're almost to the boiling point. Here we go. So I'm just going to start the timer. And just kind of mix it around just to keep it from sticking so bad. You don't want to just leave it and let it scorch. And then as the cocoa powder and the butter all get up to temp, it's going to kind of separate from the water and look kind of oily, and that's fine. That's just normal. So I'll just shut that off, and you can kind of see how it is definitely separated, but like I said, that's fine. So we're just going to sit that back there and let it cool. All right, so while our liquid mixture is cooling, we're going to get started on our dry mixture. So in this bowl I've got 2 cups of all-purpose flour. We don't need to sift it or anything like that. It'll be fine. We're going to add 2 cups of granulated sugar to this. My second cup here. I truly think this cake is just as easy to make as like a cake, like a box mix. It's super simple. So, and you don't need the stand mixer. So just a bowl that's big enough to hold all the ingredients. All right, so I'm going to give this a little bit of a whisk to start. And then to this we're going to add a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And then 1 teaspoon of baking soda. And then just mix that. Now, one of the things, this recipe called for buttermilk, but it also, you could do the substitution, the buttermilk substitution, which is just milk with either vinegar or with lemon juice, which is what my mom always did, because she rarely had buttermilk in the house, so she just always did the substitution, but I usually have buttermilk, so I think the buttermilk makes it the best. So, all right, our mixture is still pretty hot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour it in here. And with this being a dry ingredient, it's going to help to cool that down pretty fast. Fast enough that it won't cook our eggs when we put those in. So just scrape out the bottom, because a lot of the cocoa powder all stuck to the bottom. So you just want to make sure, I say stuck, it just settled. So just get all of that out. Okay. I'm just going to mix that in. And like I said, the flour and the sugar will help to cool this down. Mixed up, and now we're going to add a half a cup of buttermilk. Get this mostly mixed in here. Oops. And then our eggs. So 2 eggs, whole eggs. And just gonna give it a quick whisk here. Otherwise, you wind up chasing the egg yolk around. All right. So I've got my oven preheated to 350 degrees. And I've got my pans prepared. So you could, this recipe will make like one 9 by 13 sheet cake. It will also make 2 8-inch round cakes or 3 6-inch round cakes or batch cupcakes. So usually about 22 cupcakes. If you use an ice cream scoop, you could probably squeeze out 24 if you just lightened them up just a little bit. So, all right. And that's all there is to mixing that up. That's that simple. There's no whipping it and all of that like you would some of the other cake recipes. So, all right. So I've got my cake pans prepared already. I just sprayed them with a little bit of the baker's spray, put in some parchment paper in there, and then just kind of spritzed it again a little bit. So I've got 3 of these. And we're just going to divide these. You could measure out if you wanted to, if you weren't sure. I just eyeball them. Okay. All right, so we're just going to clean these edges because I really dribbled some around. There we go. And then I'm going to add my wraps here. This is going to help them to bake even and not dome over. That way I'm not cutting half of the cake off just to level it out. All right, so I'm going to bake these in a 350-degree oven for about 20 to 30 minutes. I'll check them with the toothpick at the 20-minute mark and then adjust as we go. So when they come out, I'm going to let them cool for about 10 minutes, and then I'm going to turn them out and wrap them in plastic wrap. And then you can either put them in the fridge if you're going to decorate these the next day. You could freeze them if it's going to be several days. I'm going to put them in the freezer because I want to be able to decorate them this afternoon, and I need them to cool all the way down quickly. So I'm just going to pop them in the freezer for maybe 2 hours, and then that should be where I need them to be. All right, so we're going to get started making our white chocolate buttercream frosting for our chocolate cakes. And before I get going any further on this, one thing I did forget to add to the cake was 1 teaspoon of vanilla. So you'll want to add that when you're adding your buttermilk and your eggs. I did add it after the fact, but I failed to mention that till I saw the vanilla sitting there. So anyway, so we're going to get started on our frosting. So I've got just some water, probably about 1.5 cups of water in this saucepan. I'm just bringing it up to a simmer, and then I've weighed out 6 ounces of white chocolate melting discs, and you can get those in just about any grocery store. You can use whatever white chocolate you like. Just don't use that baker's, like the really hard chunks, because it's just really just a white candy melt. It's not really white chocolate. So we're just going to melt this. I've just set a bowl over this so it steams and melts it from the bottom. So and I'm going to turn this down on kind of a medium low, and it's not going to take very long to melt. So I'm just going to turn that fire off. And it is nice and smooth, so we're just going to pull that. I'm just going to sit it here on a napkin. There we go. Just sit this over there. All right, so I've let the chocolate sit for a good 5 minutes and to try to cool down some. We're going to get started on the other part of our frosting. So I need 2 sticks of room temperature butter, and my butter is far beyond room temperature at this point. It's super warm in my kitchen today since I've had the oven going all day cooking. So this is not going to take much. We're just going to give it a quick spin. And then we're going to add 2 cups of powdered sugar, and I did not sift this. You can if you want. And now we're going to add our chocolate. So when I touch it, it's about lukewarm. So it's still warm, but at least it's not hot. So get that all scraped in there. Okay, and then I'm just going to turn this on a high, kind of a medium high speed. So about between a 4 and a 6 on the KitchenAid. And then I'm also going to get a bag of frozen veggies and kind of put up against the sides here to help cool it down some more. So, all right, so we've mixed that for quite some time. I just grabbed a bag of ice to kind of keep held around it to cool it down a bit. And it's about like so. So now we're going to add our vanilla and some heavy whipping cream. And then I'm also going to add just a little bit of salt. The salt will just kind of help to balance the flavors since there's a lot of sweetness to it. It's not going to make it salty. So if you're using salted butter, then you could just omit the salt altogether. I do not have salted butter right now, so this is just a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. So, and then we're going to go with 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And then a 1/2 cup of heavy whipping cream. And the heavy whipping cream is cold, so that'll also help it to bring that temperature on down. And then we're going to mix it, kind of beat it at between a 6 and an 8, so fairly high. All right, so we're going to go with this. It's still pretty soft, but I mean, it will hold a peak. Since I'm not piping this, it's going to be okay. If it's not thick enough for whatever you're using it for, you can add more powdered sugar to it. Just try not to add too much because then it just becomes really sweet and then doesn't taste as good. So just, maybe a 1/2 cup or so. And if you need to, if your house is super warm, if you live in a really warm, humid area, you might need to even just put this bowl into the refrigerator for 20-30 minutes for it to cool it down. So we're gonna go with this. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna cut these in half. So I just kind of made a score. I want to try to get them as even as I can. And you're going to want to be careful when you're cutting these. If I had like an 8-inch or larger, I would put it on my turntable and cut it in half that way. But since these are so small, I can handle them a lot better, so. And you want to be very careful not to cut yourself. So if you're not comfortable cutting it this way, just put it on your turntable. You just need it to be at a level so you can see and make sure that you're getting it evenly cut. There we go. All right. And underneath it, this is just that stuff that you can get like to line your kitchen cabinets with, but it kind of has some grip to it, so it lays nicely on there, and then you can set your cake cardboard on there, and then once you get your cake started, it's not going to slide. The weight of it will keep it, so you won't have any movement. So we're just going to put a little bit of our frosting here, not too much. We just need a little glue, and we're going to start with this one. I like to, if I'm making a small cake like this, I like to split each layer just so you have chocolate and filling and chocolate and filling. So it just, the presentation looks really nice. So we're just gonna put a little bit on there. All right. Other one on top of that, and just kind of smoosh it down. You just want to make sure that they're not, your layers aren't hanging over on one side, because when you go to frost the sides, it's going to be hard to do. So we're just going to add a little more. This layer just had a slight little dome, so it wasn't enough for me to trim off, but I wanted to try to get that layer even. We're going to want to put these in the fridge for a while because it is so warm in this house today and humid. So that's one thing when you're working with buttercream, it's just going to melt. So normally I would put the bottom as the top, but the top is so flat that I'm just going to use the top of it for the top. Okay. just like to fill in the gaps, kind of spackling it a little bit. There we go. Alright, and for the top, there we go. Now what I'm going to do is just do a crumb coat on this and put it in the fridge for about 20 minutes, well 10 to 20 minutes. That way it firms up, and then when I go to put the finish coat on, it'll be cooler and easier for it to stick. And I won't get these chocolate crumbs in my finish. Alright, so we're just going to pop this into the refrigerator for about 10 to 20. And then we've got just enough frosting to finish off the finish coat. And it won't be super thick either, just because we already have so many layers of frosting. So, alright, we'll be back. Alright, so I left this cake in the refrigerator for about 10 minutes, and it was enough time for it to firm up. So we're just going to go ahead and finish putting our finish coat on here. And since I'm not going to do any piping, I want to make sure I get all the way to the bottom. Kind of seal that off. this point, I just want to make sure that everything is covered. And any place where you see some cake poking through. I'm not really looking for it to be not super smooth. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take, I'm going to try it from this direction. So I'm just going to place my palette knife here and just run it around. I'm not putting a lot of pressure, just a little bit of pressure. And we're going to start right up where that one ended. Just go around each one. It's a little bit too much there. Okay. It just gives you a little bit of a ruffly kind of effect. And if you're just kind of holding that palette knife in the same spot, then it keeps your lines a little straighter and just turning your turntable. And then for the top one here, we're just kind of around like so. And then usually the top's always a little on the trickier side. So let's just try to kind of smooth this a little bit. Okay. And then we're just going to try this in the center. And we'll just kind of fix this one a little bit. There we go. All right. So we used almost every bit of that frosting, just a little tiny bit left, not much, like maybe a quarter of a cup, if that much. So for this, now we're just going to run our paper towel here just along the edge to try to clean up the frosting. Now you could use like some foil on your cake boards. This one has a good coating, so you can just wipe it down. But I do have some that they just, as soon as you put a buttercream on there, it just gets grease stains on it. So I cover those with foil. All right. Now you could go with it like that, or you could add some other decorations if you wanted to. I'm going to add some sprinkles. So I just got some that's like blue and purple and dark blue and gold. So we're just going to add some of that here to the top. And we're going to call that good. Now you could take some, if you just wanted to do a smooth finish, you could have taken some and just kind of pressed them in on the sides, but we're going to leave the sides the way they are and just go with a little bit of color on top. So there is our chocolate cake with our white chocolate buttercream frosting. If you like this video and you'd like to see more, just go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you know when I'm going to post a new video, and go ahead and share and comment. If you have comments or questions, go ahead and ask. I'll be happy to answer anything that you might be curious about. So, all right, until next time, friends.